Right. The topic for today's discussion is around B2C sales and marketing. And my entire experience has been in consumer products. So while whatever we discuss for next 30 odd minutes will apply somewhat to services, to other sectors as well. But core of my learning where I have learned is around consumer products. That's the industry where I've spent close to around 11 years of my life. And I'm fairly passionate about. Before I get into the topic and some of the things, what is B2C sales, marketing, what is CPG, all of that, maybe a very quick introduction about myself. And I've not kept anything verbose. There are a few images which you see on the screen. So as Debajit said, almost 11 years of my post MBA work experience has been with an organization called GSK Consumer Healthcare, which you may not know, but you will definitely know some of the brands which GSK Consumer Healthcare has. Brands like Horlicks, Boost, Eno, Iodex, Crocin, Sensodyne. These are all household names which would have touched our lives at some point in time. And as part of my last 11 years, I have worked on almost each of these brands in both sales as well as marketing capacity. That's where you see the second image. And I'll come to later in how people typically build their careers and what are the skills required to excel in this field. But my career, the way it's been, out of these 11 years, I've spent almost equal amount of time in sales and marketing. And I'm equally passionate about both sales as well as marketing as far as my journey goes. And as part of my job, I love to travel. In last 11 years, I have stayed in all 32 states, and I have almost traveled too extensively within these states. So from northeast to southern states to west to north, you name it, and I have been to these places. And as part of my current job, I now work outside India. I handle markets in Asia Pacific, including India for GSK as part of a strategy assignment. So a very brief overview about me. But more importantly, I thought it will be important to understand about you a little bit, to know what our audience is, and for us to know each other better, and for me to ensure that the content can be customized according to the type of audience. If there are really senior people, then I'll speak a little bit. I'll assume that a lot about the topic is already known, and I'll get deeper into these topics. And if we have people who are just starting their journeys, I'll then get into that space that how do you start your journey in this sector. So Devajit, would you be kind enough to help me out with the poll?
Sure. Sagar, is the poll visible on the screen? And if some participants can confirm, just two simple questions like Sagar mentioned, people, how many years of experience do you have? And why are you attending this session? Yes, I have already started getting votes. That means that the poll is visible on the screen. Just mention your years of experience and your reason for attending the session. We have 9 votes already, so about 40% votes are received. Just requesting everyone to share their answers quickly. Yeah, 60% votes received. Yeah, we have 80%. Maybe we'll wait for 5 seconds more for the last 1 or 2 people. Yes, so we'll end it here. If you can see the results on the screen, I think Sagar, 31% people have less than 2 years of experience, which is
okay.
which is coincidentally also colliding with 31% people having more than 8 years of experience, which is
okay.
which is the highest
All
bracket.
right.
And rest everyone is in between. But yeah, 2 to 4 years experience also has about 23% people. So
Okay.
if you want to bucket, then maybe 54% in the within 4 years. Why are they attending this session? 54% people say, I want to know about the topic in general because I'm not aware of this category. The rest are divided into 2 buckets. 23% each say I'm in B2C sales already and I want to ace it. And the rest 23% say I aspire to get into B2C sales and marketing. I'm currently not there. So that's the breakup of the audience.
Okay, that's helpful. A lot of our work is into numbers and segmenting the audience. So this numbers usually they do help. So I'll take into account as I go about this journey, and I'll take you through the topic. But really helpful. What I'm taking out of it is primarily, while experience we have a fair mix, but in terms of people who are already working in this field, we have more people who are interested in this field, are not working in this field and would want to know about it, and some people who are already working in B2C sales and they want to build their skills. So really helpful. Thanks a lot, Debajit. So with that, I'll quickly move, and this is fairly basic, so I'll not spend too much time here. But what exactly is B2C sales and marketing in a CPG context? What do you mean by B2C? As is the acronym, B2C stands for business to consumer. So when you look at sales to marketing, typically it starts with an organization or a brand which wants to sell or market its product to a prospective market. Now, this prospective market, who's the buyer for this service or this product, could be a business or could be a consumer. Say, for example, if there are two businesses who are buying products between themselves, say, for example, there is an industrial manufacturer who is supplying goods to, say, a end industry. That's not a consumer, but two businesses. This process is typically what's called a B2B. I've generalized and simplified it. But when the end consumer, when the end of that process, who buys the product and who consumes the product is end consumer, that's when you call this as a B2C sales and marketing process. Now, in a nutshell, what is there is an organization or a brand or a manufacturer who has their own products. And as you can see on the left side, there is a list of prominent FMCG companies in the country. And on the right side, there is a consumer who probably should have a need which this product can fulfill. To give you a very simple example, for example, I am a consumer. I have a very, very apparent need. My clothes are dirty. I need a detergent to wash my clothes. That's a need which needs to be fulfilled, and there is a detergent that needs to come in which needs to solve this problem for me. Now, the job of the companies on the left side is to convince me that for this need, the best available option or the one which I should consider could be Tide, could be Ariel, could be Surf Excel, could be so on and so forth. A number of options exist, right? So that process in which you ensure that the consumer is actually feeling the need to try your own product to met an apparent gap in her life. That's what the process of B2C marketing entails. And I'll get into the details of this process is and what it entails. But that in a nutshell is what in a layman's term this process is. That how do you create demand for your product, for your brands, and how do you ensure that you meet genuine unmet consumer needs through your own products and brands. Now that's the need which is there, which you have a product to fulfill. I am convinced, suppose for example, that I need to buy Tide to clean my clothes because Tide seems to be the best available option basis the communication I have seen from Tide, basis whatever I have heard from my friends. I probably saw an ad on YouTube that convinced me that I need to buy Tide. That's the part where demand generation has probably helped in getting this demand. But how do you fulfill it? The next step is for me to actually step out of my house and go and buy Tide, right? I go either to my nearby Kirana shop or I go to, say, a Big Bazaar or to a D-Mart, or maybe I open my phone, I open Amazon or Big Basket and I look to buy it. Now, for me to buy Tide or Ariel or any product, it needs to be available. It needs to be available on the Kirana shop. It needs to be available on the e-com platform. It needs to be available in DMart. That is where the whole bit around demand fulfillment comes in. That how do you ensure that once the consumer wants to buy your product, that is available to them at an arm length of desire, that is available to them when they go out and shop, that product is available for them to buy. And that's broadly what the job of B2C sales entails. That's what exactly these people, this function in an organization is about, that how do you ensure fulfillment of demand. Now that's a very simplistic view, and probably I made it more simple than the whole process is. I'm sure a lot of you know there are almost 9 million outlets in India. 90 lakh outlets is what the whole FMCG outlet universe is in India. And what to ensure, say your factory is in North, and to ensure the smallest village in AP has availability for your product, that entails a complex sales structure. There are many intermediaries in between. There are many small businesses who will do the job of a hub and spoke for you in this process. And that's what this whole system looks like. So again, this is a very simplified view of how typically a FMCG sales structure would look like, where you will have intermediaries who are small businesses like a distributor, who will typically get the stocks from the organization. When I say stocks, the actual physical products from the organization. They will supply it to more intermediaries depending upon where exactly the consumer you're trying to reach out to is based. Suppose the consumer is in Delhi and your factory is also in Delhi. Probably you will have only one intermediary who will supply it to an intermediary. That intermediary goes to the nearby Kirana shop and from where the consumer can buy. But if your factory is in Delhi and your consumer is located in a small village in Tamil Nadu, there may be multiple intermediaries to ensure that the product actually reaches to that consumer. That's in an sense is what a typical FMCG or a typical B2C sales structure for a consumer product would look like, where you will have these intermediaries that will do this job for you. But again, they are not exclusive. A wholesaler would have your stocks. They will also have your competitor brand stock. They will also have other categories. So there won't be any, say, wholesaler or a modern trade outlet or a Kirana shop, which will solely be supplying your goods, right? When you go to an outlet to buy, they will have all the possible categories, all the possible brands, all the possible combinations of products, pack sizes available for you to buy. This essentially has been the traditional view of B2C sales in a consumer product definition, that you have this traditional model where you need to supply to your Kirana shop, to chemist. There are multiple intermediaries in between. But what has changed in last probably say 5 to 7 years is the advent of e-commerce, which is totally, while again, and I'll say this with a caveat that it's not that e-commerce is now 100% of this business. It's still a very small percent. Most of the organizations have 5 to 8% as their e-commerce sales. But what it has revolutionized is the whole model. That earlier model of having one intermediary supplying to the second intermediary, supplying to the third intermediary, and eventually reaching to the consumer. That whole piece has been shrunk into just one piece, where as a consumer, I open the app, I order, and I receive it. And as an organization, rather than dealing with so many intermediaries, most of the organizations would be dealing directly with, say, a Big Basket or an Amazon or a Flipkart to ensure availability and supply of their goods. Now, to ensure that this network, whether this is this traditional network we are talking about, or this e-commerce or other channels which we are talking about, this functions efficiently. This ensures that the products are being available to me. So if say a person in a town is going to buy my product, that is available to them, and that's available at an arm length of desire, is the job of a B2C sales job. Is a job of a B2C sales network to ensure that through all this system works like a well-oiled machinery, and we need to ensure that as a part of our job as a B2C salesperson. In terms of your key deliverables on which you are evaluated as a B2C salesperson, things like sales number, that's the most important piece, that at the end of the day, you need to ensure that revenue is coming to the organization. So whatever the territory may be, whatever the size of business maybe you are handling, or whatever the geography you are handling, you are ensuring that you are delivering the sales targets for that geography, territory, or area which you are assigned. B, you need to ensure distribution KPIs. So if, for example, your territory has say X number of outlets, X number of shops, you need to ensure that your product is available in all those X shops. If you are an e-commerce manager, you need to ensure that your product is available at all time on all the possible e-commerce platforms. That's where distribution comes in. Salesforce efficiency, ensuring that when you have your physical resources going on field and ensuring this availability of the products, they are working with optimal efficiency. They are going to more outlets, they are going to more consumers, is a part of your job. And ensuring that this function works well within this whole cosmos which we are talking about would typically be the KPIs on which a salesperson in a B2C network would be measured on. When it comes to marketing, the situation turns a little bit, because essentially these two jobs are very, very different in their nature, as we talked about here. And I'll give you an example probably from my last job. I was handling a brand called Eno. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about this brand. It's the number one antacid in the country with almost a 55% market share. First part is, how do you pick up a relevant insight insight mining, insight development, picking up consumer insight is very, very critical to a marketing job. So the insight, say for example, for Eno was that most of the consumers, they use a home remedy when they have acidity. So they go to an ajwain, to jeera, kala namak, or all these home remedies. Whereas this is not really an insight, that's a fact, right? The insight was that even though they take home remedies, they don't believe that home remedy works very fast. It takes a lot of time to give me relief from acidity. And that is where we picked up these insight and moved to the second level, which is around communication development. So I know there is a problem in consumers' life. How can I convince that my brand or my product can do a job in elevating this problem in a better manner? So that's where this whole communication on Eno gets to work in 6 seconds. You find home remedies are slow. So here is a fast solution which is available to you, which can give you fast acidity relief. Is very, very critical to a part of a B2C marketing job. First, pick up the insight, develop communication around this insight. The next logical step is how do you deliver this communication? So I have told you this, but if you have, say, n number of consumers across different parts in the country, how do you convince them? How do you deliver this message to them that Eno is the best available and the fastest available antacids? That's where media management and media planning comes into the picture. That which are the consumers you will reach through television, which are the consumers you will reach through print, which are the consumers who will see this communication on an outdoor hoarding, or the buzzword these days, which are the consumers you will reach on digital. And digital has really revolutionized this industry. Earlier, when I started, probably most of the organizations were not, either they were doing digital as a good to do activity or not doing anything on digital. From there, for many mature brands, almost 20 to 25% of their total spends, which includes TV, print, radio, all the other mediums, that of that spend, almost 20 to 25% right now goes on digital, right? So that, how do you plan your communication, which consumers which you will reach through which medium, and how much do you invest on which medium is critical to the part of a marketing person, which is the media management job. And then looking at the health of the brand, that is your communication doing well? While you have developed the communication, you have picked up the insights, you have picked up your media choices, but are you able to shift the needle? If your objective was that more people should now try Eno instead of home remedies, is that really happening? Is your consideration amongst consumers improving? Are more people trying Eno instead of home remedies? That's a kind of brand health management job entails as part of your overall job in marketing. And then looking at innovations, looking at product development. So while you will have a product in place right now, but as you would know, consumer needs also keep evolving. We used to use probably a soap bar to wash our clothes. Then we moved to detergents. Then we moved to specific detergents for our washing machines. And now we are talking about pods and capsules. So that's how consumers keep evolving. And that's how you as a brand and a business need to evolve along with your consumers. And that's where innovation development and new product development also becomes critical to a part of a marketing, B2C marketing person's job. And key deliverables for this person, first and foremost, is to ensure that you deliver your market share. So your brand from a competitive landscape is able to gain market share, is able to go to more consumers, and more consumers are actually becoming your own brand consumers, is a key deliverable for a marketing person. A big difference between sales and marketing. So while sales has top line targets, that this is the number you need to deliver, marketing is responsible for the whole P&L. So typically a marketer would have a sales target as well as a profitability target for their brand, because marketing is also a cost center. All this what we are talking about, right from media development to media management to communication development, all of that takes money out of the pocket for the brand or the business. So ensuring that you are delivering on your profitability is also a very important parameter for a marketing person. Ensuring the brand health matrices, which I talked about without getting into specifics, and ensuring that the innovation pipeline as the consumer needs evolve is being maintained and you are developing new products as per consumer needs is also critical to the job of a B2C marketing person. So with that, I'll just take a pause here. Debajit, in case there are any questions on the window, since I can't see that, happy to take them right now. If not, then I'll move to the next section.
Yeah, there are one or two questions. Agar, I'll just start with mine and then also take the questions that have come on the chat. Keen to know, how do you exactly measure market share? I mean, is it at a consumer by consumer level, or is it more in terms of the distribution and penetration of the distribution that has happened for the product? Because, for example, if I start using Eno today as compared to a home remedy, how do you get to know as an organization that now I have started using your product?
Yeah. Fair question, Devajit. So typically this will be done by an agency. For example, agencies like Nielsen or IQVIA, they have a panel. So Nielsen has a panel of almost 25,000 outlets which are distributed across the country, which they go and capture. So they will go and capture in that panel of outlets. So these are basically shops where they go and they check which are the products that have got sold, right? So that's not actually consumption, that someone has bought the product, they assume that they will go and consume the product as well. But what gives them an idea is that if, say, suppose a new product was launched and it was made available x number of shops, has the product been purchased by the consumer? And basis that, so if say take a very simplistic universe, if there were 4 outlets and say all 3 competition products were available in all 4 outlets, they will go to these 4 outlets and they will pick up how much of product A has got sold, how much of product B has got sold, how much of product C has got sold, and basis that is then they will cascade or build an market share projection for the entire universe of outlet. So that's a fairly robust panel which Nielsen has, and that's how they measure market share. It's basis your actual offtakes, whatever sales you have delivered compared to your competition. If the total sale for the category is 100, what is the contribution or percentage of your brand? In your case, where you said, why, how will you know that the consumer who was using home remedy has started using Eno? In that case, it's not really a competition game, because you were not taking one of the competition. You were not taking Digene, Gelusil, or any of the competing brands. You are a new consumer who have come into the category. So what typically will happen in this case, the sale for category which was 100 will probably become 101, 102, depending upon how much you purchased. And that 2 additional will go under the category of Eno in the overall scheme of things. And that's how we will still gain market share, by expanding the category of the market. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Sagar. I have a few more, but I'll take the audience questions first. Rahul is asking, how do you prepare marketing budgets for a new product which has different positioning versus existing products by incumbents? Example, Parodontax toothpaste versus Colgate Fresh. Also, how do you decide split between ATL versus BTL versus social media? So 2-3 questions together, but yeah.
Okay, so I'll answer the first question. So see, deciding on the budgets, there can be many ways to look at what's the ideal budget for a given product or a new innovation. Especially, you can look at what your competition is spending right now. If it's a category where you are looking at a competitive play, usually when you launch, and there is something called A2S, which is advertisement to sales ratio, which is how you plan your media and your investment on a brand. Say, for example, if your sales is 100, if you are spending 10 rupees in advertisement and media, so your A2S, advertisement to sale, is 10%. For a new product, typically when you launch a product, you usually look at a A2S which is much beyond 1, right? Because in the first year, say a new product, when it gets launched, if you are expecting, say, 100 of sales, you will invest 300, 400, 500. In cases you will invest even 2000, 20x of what you are looking at your sales, depending upon how aggressive you are in that category, depending on the kind of upside you are looking at the category. Without getting into numbers, when Sensodyne was launched, GSK invested heavily in that category. Now, why did they invest heavily? Because the job was difficult. At that point in time, no one knew what sensitivity is. No one knew that there is a toothpaste which needs to be taken, which can get rid of sensitivity. And that was the job which Sensodyne had to do, which was a job of category creation. And that's where, if the job is difficult, you will need to put in more money behind that. Say if you are having an extension, say tomorrow Eno launches another flavor, that's an innovation, right? But it's still in the same category. It's supposed to do the same job as Eno is doing. It's just a new flavor which is getting launched. maybe the investment required for this new launch of a flavor, cons- uh, considering that the marketing task which you have is not very complex, will not be as high. So that's how I've tried to simplify it. But broadly, when you are looking at new launches, you will look at the upside. You will look at what the objective for this innovation is, what is the marketing task for this innovation, and how complex is that task, and most importantly, what's the kind of upside you are looking at in the long term. Maybe right now it's an investment for future, but how big can be big in future is basis how you look at planning investments on innovations. And your second question was, how do you look at a mix of investment on ATL versus BTL? That's very, very dependent on the category you are playing. So if it's a category which is very, very heavy on trade, which is driven by investments on BTL on trade, for the larger audience, ATL is above the line. Traditional mediums like TV, digital radio, these will be above the line. And say mediums which are more, say, activations led, which are more tactical in nature, say investments around trade spends, investment around customer promotions. These are typically, or activations in market for consumers, these are typically classified as BTL spends below the line. So again, depending upon the brand, depending upon the category, you will have some bit of norms as part of those premise. And also, say for example, BTL interventions are very, very effective if you're looking at a given geography, if you're looking at specific, because the scale or the scope of BTL marketing interventions is typically limited compared to ATL. When you go on TV, you can go national. But when you are doing a physical outreach activation program, you will probably reach 5, 10, 15,000 consumers. So again, depending upon what your objective is, depending upon what the kind of brand you are, and depending on what's the scope and the size of your task, is how you define what sort of spend goes in ATL and what sort of spend goes in BTL. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Sagar. Palak has two questions. First, she's asking, assuming you hire agencies for insights, if yes, what are the key parameters to decide which agency to hire? The second question she has is, given the ongoing trends, is social media marketing, influencer affiliate marketing moving up in a big way in B2C also?
Good questions, Palak. So first one, while you will have agencies, my experience is that this is core to a marketeer's job, because no one would be as close to your brand or your category compared to you. So that job needs to be delivered by you. So agencies will typically, say agencies like Nielsen, Kantar, they will do market research for you. But it's very, very important that as a marketeer, you are doing your own consumer connects, while the agencies will organize them for you. You are attending groups, you are understanding how your consumers are reacting to your communication, your product, what are the areas where competition is finding tractions, what are the unmet needs, what are the areas where needs are getting evolved. So that is very, very important. And agencies, while different brands and organizations have different preferences, but if you're going to a top agency, typically you will find pretty much uniform in terms of the quality of work they deliver. And most important is how good or what's the quality of work they deliver is the key critical criteria for a big organization. The second question around influencer and social marketing, that's actually becoming very, very important. While and I'm also working right now in evolved markets like Japan, China, which are probably ahead of India right now. China, it's huge. This whole piece on influencer marketing, social marketing, brands are almost investing 15-20% of their budgets on influencer marketing. There are products which are getting launched in the market through influencers. So while India, we are not to that stage right now, but what I am seeing of now, even traditional brands that were not investing on digital, that were not investing on social, they are getting on this in a big way. And it's intuitive, right? You will follow your consumers. If your consumers are going to social, if they're listening to influencers, that is a space where you will find a lot of traction as well for brands. Having said that, the rules of the game in these fields are still getting set. So if you ask me this question, that how do you measure whether an influencer campaign has been successful or not, I wouldn't have a very straight answer to that question, honestly. You will say you will do a sentiment analysis, you will look at the organic reach, you will look at the inorganic reach. But if you ask me a question, if you invested X in an influencer marketing campaign, what did you get out of it? Give me a hard number to it. Again, I will not have an answer to it. So this field, as I'm saying, it's fairly nascent, and the rules and engagement of in this field are getting set. But going forward, I see big potential and big investments in this the new age media options which are available, even for traditional brands.
Thank you, Sagar. We'll take one last one. There are many more that have come, but we'll take it at the end.
Sure,
Sanjay is
sure. No
asking,
worries.
and he's asked it twice, so I think he desperately needs this answer. How is GSK reaching to the rural market after the Horlicks HUL deal?
Okay, fair enough. So, honestly, Sanjay, I'm not very close to the India business now, so I won't have the exact information. And again, it's a bit of a proprietary information for an organization to actually give details on its sales system. But again, having said that, so typically what a structure for a B2C sales organization would be, again, as I talked about, there will be intermediaries. So for reaching a far-flung rural area consumer, you will typically have a network of salespeople. So right now, in case of GSK, that network has been outsourced to HUL, if you may know that. So HUL is doing the sales part. This a whole part for GSK right now is being done by HUL for whatever brands are left with GSK. Sensodyne, Eno, Iodex, Crocin, all of these brands. And HUL has a very, very strong network. They are directly present in almost 3.5 to 3 million outlets, and that's is the network which GSK is leveraging right now to ensure availability of its product to the last mile consumer. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, we can move on for now. Sagar will come back to the question.
Yeah, all right. So, but thanks. I think really, really interesting questions and good questions and valid questions to ask. I'll quickly then move on to. So, I've talked about what the job entails, what's the kind of KPIs you look at, what in a nutshell is the kind of work you will do. But moving on, what a typical career in FMCG sales and marketing would look like. As you would know, the end state for anyone is the CEO of the organization. You are the de facto head. But what does a career look like in the beginning? Where do you start? What's the kind of responsibility you have? So I'll give you a quick flavor on that. So typically, when I say these are generalized cases, there will always be exception to these rules. But an entry level role is what you start with, and that usually is a sales role for people. People don't typically join big in the beginning in marketing. They move into marketing depending on their interest after a sales stint. So you start with an entry level sales role, and depending on where you enter the chain, depending on your seniority, you either join in as a sales executive or you join in as a sales manager. So for example, in my case, I joined in as a sales manager in GSK in northeastern states. So I was taking care of the entire 7 northeastern states based out of Guwahati. As an entry level manager, one thing which you get very, very immediately, and probably the only industry where you get this exposure in such a early stage, is you handle a team. So for in my case, I was handling a team of 9 people who were handling a team of almost 70 people. So indirectly, that was my reporting span looking like. And I had what 4 months of experience at that point in time, and that managing that whole network of people at that point in time, that really hones you as a sales leader to begin with. For depending upon how your career goes, your next role could be a senior sales manager in a more important, bigger territory, or you can move into trade marketing, which is around managing trade spends, ensuring visibility, ensuring some of the machinery which I talked about in the last slide is working as per the requirement. Or you can move in as a manager, as a sales manager in a specific channel, say modern trade or e-commerce, where you handle the sales responsibility for this given channel. As a role in sales manager, again, as I said, you are responsible for the area assigned to you. As I was in Northeast, I had a top line target to be delivered, that this is my monthly number which I need to deliver as my sales target. I also had distribution targets. I also had innovation launch targets which I had to do. But everything on ensuring that the sales infrastructure in Northeast works as per the requirement. After doing these stints, if you are looking at a career which is primarily built in sales and you stay in sales, the next role could be as a branch, regional, or a channel head. Where, say, for example, I also did, while I crisscrossed, and I'll talk about that as well. But I did a stint in North as a branch head, where I was handling UP, Rajasthan, and Uttaranchal, these 3 states. And all the sales managers for these states and senior sales manager for these states were reporting into me. So that's where the responsibilities become bigger. You are handling much bigger business. You are handling much bigger span of people. Say for my case, the organization size was almost 250 or 300 people at that point in time, directly and indirectly reporting into me. So a big span of our people reporting into you, big business to manage, complex territory, complex infrastructure is typically the job of a branch or a region head. A channel head is, as you become a channel manager, you can do this job as a channel head for the entire country. Say, for example, there would be a channel head for modern trade who will be responsible for all the accounts across India, and there will be a sales target as well as execution target for a channel manager, channel head. And the end state and the last role, which is probably an important role in the whole scheme of things, is a country sales director, where you do this job for the whole country, that all the channels, all the functions within the sales vertical report into you, and and you report into the CEO. So that's typically how careers get built when you're looking at a career within B2C sales, or specifically if you're looking at FMCG sales. In marketing, you typically start as a brand or a senior brand manager. And that happens, as I said, after a sales stint, depending upon if you have an interest. You can move towards the left side as well. But if you have interest and if you want to get into marketing, depending on your performance, inclination, availability, this is where you start. A brand or a senior brand manager will have one brand assigned to them, and they will be taking care, depending on the size and the status of the brand, they will be taking care of all the responsibilities which I talked about in previous slide for that brand. After which you could move as a category marketing manager, where your responsibilities will extend. You will be probably handling a number of brands as part of one given category. Say, for example, if you started as a brand manager, you will start as a brand manager, say for Mother Horlicks. That's a variant of Horlicks or a Junior Horlicks. After doing that, you probably will become a category marketing manager, where you will be handling the whole of Horlicks portfolio, which has all the Horlicks brand under it: Junior Horlicks, Mother Horlicks, Women Horlicks, Base Horlicks, and all these brand managers will report into you. The next role becomes of a category head, which in this case could be a health food drinks category head, where you have both Horlicks, Boost, or any other health food brands reporting into you. And the end state for this is a marketing director, where you take care of marketing for all the brands for the organization. That is how a structure would look like. Depending upon the size, complexity, number of brands, you may have more levels coming in between, but that's how careers usually get built in sales and marketing. However, there is also a way, while people follow these straight lines on these left and right, but there is also a way where people typically crisscross between these. So for example, in my case, I started as a sales manager. I did a senior sales manager assignment, after which I moved into a brand assignment as a senior brand manager. After that, I came back to sales. Then I did a branch head assignment, as I talked about in North. And then I moved back to marketing as a category marketing manager. And right now I am actually doing a strategy assignment outside APAC. So again, these are options which are available to people depending upon their performance, depending upon their inclination. But one advice, and I'll come to it in the last slide, is to look at building a broad-based skill. So even if you are within sales, try to build more skills. Try to build. Don't chase vertical jumps and promotions only. Try to look at more movements within your function. Try doing trade marketing. Try doing sales management. Try doing channel management. Try doing, say, commercial excellence assignments. Build a variety of skills, because as you start moving down this funnel, for a country sales director or for a regional head, having all of these experiences, or say for a CEO having probably both of these experiences, they become more important, because then you have different functions reporting into you. So that's how typically people will build their careers in sales and marketing. In the next section, I'll just talk about, so while you have understood that, what this job entails, what typical careers for people look like, but what exactly does it take to succeed in this? What are the kind of skills which are required? So there are functional skills, but there are also some personal skills which you need to have as an individual, which you need to build and continuously evolve as you start becoming better or start becoming a better professional in this field. So some of these things are important. Data obsession, and I could have written data centric, data understanding, but I've carefully written obsession, because many a times when, especially for people who are starting up, they believe I am creative, then that's why I need to be in marketing because I'll make consumer ads. That's not really the, while that's a part of your work and you need to be creative, but a lot of your work is around data. A lot of your work is around understanding trends, understanding distribution, understanding sales, understanding consumer beliefs, perceptions. So it's a job which is fairly data extensive. So if you are looking at building a career and excelling in this field, being handy with data and being obsessed with data will be a prerequisite and will be an important skill. So there is a lot of Excel sheets which you have to go through as part of your daily job, and there is a lot of insight mining you have to do from these Excel sheets. The other big important point, and while you may understand data and you may pick up insights from the data, is how do you translate insights into action? This is very, very important. So, for example, while you picked up that consumers want a fast solution, how do you translate this insight into action? How do you get a product that offers a 6-second solution? How do you offer a product which can do that job for the consumer? And how do you quickly ensure that product is available to these consumers? And this is again a fairly simplistic example, but there are, there are critical tasks which you pick up. Say, for example, when COVID happened, I was on Eno at that point in time, and if you remember, most of Eno's communication is around food social occasions, right? You are with your family, you are enjoying, you are eating, having a good time, and you have acidity. You probably ordered in, you probably have gone out and had food, and you got acidity. All of this under lockdown went out of the picture, right? We were not going out, people were not ordering in, and nothing was happening. But we picked up this insight basis data that people have started in-home food experiments. Everyone was cooking something from YouTube, and Google actually shared this data with us that food experiments have picked up. And how did we build a communication which was still relevant for consumers with this whole trend of cooking meals in home, and how could still play a role for acidity relief even in the new normal. So that's an example that how do you quickly translate insights, how do you pick up data, and how do you translate these insights into action is very, very important. As I told you, in a sales job, you will be working with people, you will be handling large teams, you will be probably having in the beginning of your career, you will have people much older to you reporting to you. So especially for B2C sales, this ability to work with people and handle large teams is very, very important. In fact, it's critical. And in a both B2B sales and marketing setup, but more so in marketing, because what happens in marketing is that you don't have people reporting into you early in your career. You have a lot of peers you work with. Say, for example, someone working in supply chain. If you have to get your communication out, someone working in legal who will approve that advertisement and say whatever you are claiming is right, or someone working in regulatory, someone working in new product development. All of them will be your peers. None of them will be reporting to you. You will not have authority on any one of them. So how do you influence and how do you lead without authority will be critical, and it's a very, very important skill for a B2C marketer to have, to function within your organization and to ensure that you are being effective within your organization. This skill is very, very important. Probably highlighted in the example I gave you, but gauging shifts in consumer behavior, gauging and understanding not only now, but what will happen from a future forward view of how consumers are behaving. Because if you realize that consumers behavior has changed, you are probably a little too late in picking that trend, because if they don't need your product now, you can't have a new product coming in tomorrow, right? It will take its own time to develop a new product, a new format, a new say SKU, and all of that work needs to happen say a few years back. So cascading consumer trends and behavior into a future forward view, and how do you develop innovations and new product basis, that's again a very important skill, more important as you start becoming senior in your career and you start growing within a marketing function. And last but not the least, the rules of the game, and I compare that to in 2010 when I started to what it is right now, they have changed a lot. So while FMCG as an industry and B2C sales and marketing as a career is fairly stable, right? If you look at last 30 years of trends for FMCG, even in economic downturns in 2008 or even now when COVID happened, FMCG growths are always stable, right? They don't really decline. But what has happened is how these growths are getting delivered, that has had a sea shift of in terms of priorities. E-commerce, for example, when I talked about, that's become so big right now in terms of maybe not contribution, but growth to every organization. Digital as a component of marketing, increasingly spends are going towards digital, and that requires constant upgradation of skills. So if you believe that, I have learned this much and this will take me through in my career, that approach probably may not work. So a constant upgradation of skills and constant ability to learn and adapt according to changes which are happening around you is required to excel in this field. So that's broadly what I had in terms of content. We still have around 10-11 minutes of our stipulated time. So I'm more than happy to stop here and open the floor for questions. I hope that that makes sense, Debajit.
Yeah, Sagar, very, very insightful, and it was almost back to college days after long in terms of a lot of insights that we spoke about. But a lot of questions already there. I'll try and do justice to all the questions. Sagar, the first question which was asked a while back is from Dharvi. She's saying that is ATL marketing preferred over word of mouth in B2C?
Honestly, now the way things are evolving, word of mouth, because these lines are getting blurred. So, some organizations will even call word of mouth as part of B2C. Say, for example, and how do you seed word of mouth, right? You will do it through an influencer. You will ensure that you are being part of social conversations, right? All of these are ways by which you will deliver word of mouth. So is it preferred? There is obviously there is a bit around personalization. If I am hearing something from someone I know, my chances to believe that, right? If your friend comes and tells you that this product I have tried and this is the best available product in the market, you will tend to believe that more than comparing to seeing an ad on television. So that whole bit around personalization, that whole bit on how you can customize the message according to consumers, these are elements of word of mouth that become really important, especially in categories which are driven by experts. And when I say expert, is not only doctors, but say experts who are experts in their given field. Say if you're launching a sports drink, and if you have a sports person who's not as part of advertisement and that's an important component even in influencer marketing, how do you credibly make that person say that this is something you need to try? And if you believe that message, it will have much bigger impact than seeing an ad on television where you will have someone making tall claims about the product. So it's becoming more and more important. But is it preferred over B2C? Because again, what is a downside to these is that the scale becomes limited. For a typical ATL campaign, be it television or be it YouTube, you can build massive scale. That's the advantage you have, but you don't get customization. You can't deliver different messages to different people on television. Whereas in some of these insurgent ways to market, you get that advantage.
Got it. Thanks. Sai Priya is asking, how do you plan to budget and marketing on social media? Budget your marketing on social media, since that's a big space these days for brands. As we see a lot of people moving more to digital than ever, and an easiest way to reach high audience.
Okay, how do you plan to budget and marketing on social media, since that's a big space these days on brands? Can you be a little more specific, and maybe you can unmute yourself? Maybe if you can tell me a little bit more on specifically what you are looking at to ask, because this seems a little generic for me to answer. Cypria, if you are there, happy for you to unmute yourself and maybe ask exactly what you mean. Okay, maybe we'll park this one now and we'll come back to this.
Sure. Bilal Sagar is asking, as a first year MBA student, I wanted to know which kind of skill should be developed that can help me get a job in the field of marketing in B2C.
Okay, some of it on the last part I talked about. So more than skill, first I think you should pick up whether this is the field for you, whether you have the interest for this field, right? If you answer that question, maybe try to understand some of the brands you think you're passionate about. Answer the question, why I'm passionate about this brand. What has this brand done in last few years which I feel has worked for the brand? Talk to people who are working in this field, understand the kind of work they are doing. In terms of skills which are required at an entry level to build a career in marketing in B2C, as I said, being data centric, having a keen and sharp eye for insight, for picking up something which someone will miss out. So, typical strong marketers, and we meet consumers, they will pick up something on the behavior of the consumer which they are doing, and they will come back with an insight which someone else will oversee and they will not pick up. So having that view, that sharp data orientation, as well as having that sharp orientation to which I call as consumer obsession, are two of the important skills. And more importantly, start reading about this field, because there is a lot of method to this madness. Understand how brands work, which are the brands you are passionate about, why you are passionate about. Maybe start reading a little bit about media, start reading about digital, how marketing in digital is evolving, because these are elements which will be required as functional skills. While at an entry level, no one will expect you to be an expert at it, but if you already have some of these skills, it will help you in the long term to be more effective.
Thanks, Sagar. We have another question from Palak. She says, how easy or difficult is it for experienced folks to join FMCG sector when their past experience is not in FMCG? In her opinion, there is a huge barrier.
That's a good question, Palak, and I would say yes. It's not a very inclusive industry. So if you have not have background in FMCG, typically it becomes a little difficult, especially as you start getting more and more senior. The resistance to have people, because again, the point is a lot of the learnings which you have downwards, right? When you were a sales manager or when you were a brand manager, a lot of nuances which you pick up in these profiles, they become very, very important as you start becoming a senior leader, because then these are the problems which you are expected to guide people on. So if you have not had that exposure at the beginning of your career, and if you have worked in a different industry, and again, since FMCG is not a new industry, it's been around for last 40, 50 years. In terms of processes, in terms of standardization, there is a huge bit of, say, operational excellence in this industry, right? So that's where, and that's an advantage of being starting early in this industry. You will see a lot of people moving out from FMCG to other sectors, but not a lot of people moving from other sectors back into FMCG.
Got it. Sagar, if I can ask one last one, I think a lot of youngsters still believe that a marketing career would be comparatively a more sexier career, if I may say, and therefore your entire creativity, intuition, having a comparatively more lavish lifestyle as compared to a sales career. And I still, as part of being mentors for many youngsters, get that question. What's your opinion on that?
That's a very personal call, Debajit. So I have had, as I told you, equal experience in both sales and marketing. So I've spent, out of my 11 years, I've spent around 6 years in sales, 5.5 years in sales, and around 5.5 years in marketing. Personally, what I believe, what drives me in a sales job is the kind of people interaction you have. You form very close bonds with people you work with. You work in a typical, like a sports team fashion with your own team. And if that drives you as an individual, I want to work with people, I want to build relationships, I want to work towards a common goal, show a vision to my team, lead them with passion, and people management is something that drives you, probably sales job is a good fit for you. If you're someone who believes, I'm more analytical, I have a slightly more data centric bent of mind, I, at least at the beginning of my career, I'm okay to work alone and individual capacity, and have, say, little more, say, abstract objectives to begin my career. Then maybe a marketing job is good for you. But that whole belief on, because that's an answer even I hear a lot from young people, I am creative, that's why I need to be in marketing. Trust me, while being creative helps, but that's not 10% of your job. A lot of your job is outside making those ads. Even making an ad which you see on television, if you're being true to the process, that takes 6 months. And that starts with consumer interviews, insight mining, picking up what the content of that, what will be the marketing task. And there is this whole process behind this, which is 80-85% of the process. And 15% of that is actual shoot of that, which is also done by another agency. It's not that you are directly involved in it. So that belief, I am creative, hence marketing, that is challenge. If you say I am data obsessed, I pick up insights and I'm consumer obsessed, then marketing is a better answer than to say I'm creative, hence marketing.
Makes sense. Makes sense,
Yeah.
Sagar. quick one on the next session before we say a final goodbye, everyone. We have the next one coming in, which is two things coming up actually. One is a journey of 21 days coming up on storytelling. This is starting on the 25th of September. This is for 21 days. You will have 3 mentors to take you through how to become a fantastic storyteller. As we say, eventually what remains with us 10 times more than any form of facts are stories. And even in the today's corporate world, people who can storytell well are comparatively more effective in their communication. Just as you heard Sagar also for the last 1 hour, he used a lot of his personal stories to tell you something about B2C, which he truly believes in. That's one. The second is the last session of this season that's coming up next week. We will have Gaurav. Gaurav is currently the CMO at Zupi. He was ex-CMO for both OLX and Kardeko, one of the most experienced marketers in the digital industry, the tech industry. Gaurav will be joining us at the same time, 7 to 8 p.m. And he's going to talk about critical thinking and problem solving, one of the most important skills that you need in terms of your success in your corporate career. So look forward to seeing a lot of you next week also. Sagar, thank you again. It was wonderful listening to you. I think the audience was listening intently, and that's why we got almost the maximum number of questions that we have got in any of our crack sessions. It was a
All
great
right.
pleasure hosting you, Sagar, with us.
Thanks, thanks a lot, Devajit. A pleasure here and great interacting with everyone. So thanks a lot and have a good weekend and stay safe and take care.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sagar, again. Thanks for the evening. Bye.